Welcome to another episode of the Money and Business Hero, where we talk about the three pillars of financial success: money mindset, money management, and money making, and how they can improve your financial life. My name's Florian Fritz. I'm founder of the Money Hero Academy. Welcome and thank you for listening. And today I have another very special guest, my friend Ricardo Valdes from Mexico, who is an entrepreneur, a trainer, and an investor, and as he stresses, mainly a student. So, welcome, Ricardo.
Thank you, Florian. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure and happy to help.
Great. We've talked before, and you have so many interesting stories from your experience with so many valuable lessons. I hope we can get a couple of them in this 30 minutes here. So let's start with, how did you get into business? How did you decide to become an entrepreneur?
Right. Thank you. Yes, I've made many mistakes. So hopefully, hopefully that'll help me. Help me share it with you and your audience. And we know sometimes that we have to make those mistakes in order to learn for ourselves. But hopefully, with us sharing all these things, people who have been in a similar situation or who haven't, which would be even better, can gain some light into the workings of all that entrepreneurship and financial money mindset, as you call it, money management and money making, because it's just, it's such a huge world out there, and we have to learn most of the times by ourselves. Answering your question, how did I go into business? Well, long story short, I was working as a chef for a few years, and I've been working, say, in hotels. I've been working cruise lines. I've been working in restaurants in Las Vegas, a lot of places. And at one point in my life, I was working in San Francisco at a Michelin star restaurant, and it was the most amazing experience you can imagine. Like we had 15-course tasting menu, huge money paying guests. The average diner there would spend about $150 to $100 per person. Amazing wine list, all of this, and I realized one thing, that the restaurant wasn't really making much money. Sometimes we couldn't afford to even pay the suppliers. Sometimes the checks for the cooks, for the staff, the checks were bouncing. And honestly, being in the kitchen, I didn't know what was happening. I realized that I was in a point in my career where I was still an employee. I was working for somebody else. I was obviously dependent on the salary that I was being paid. And San Francisco is a very expensive city to live in. And I realized that the highest form of cooking that I know, the highest business, the one that I aspired to have one day, wasn't really making any money. And I was in a position where I was able to talk to the business manager, to the restaurant manager, and to the front of house manager. And they started talking to me about the realities of owning a restaurant. And I realized one thing, and it was that throughout all my years, I had not learned how to manage a business. I had not learned how to manage money. And I could spend 20 more years in the kitchen, slaving my way to becoming a great chef, but I would still need investors. I would still need managers. I would still need to how to make money, how to manage it, how to go through all that, which to me was pretty much alien. Okay.
Why would you know about money as a chef, right?
Exactly. At the end of the day, basically for me, money was just like, at that point, was just like a salary. And then the money that the clients were charged in order to pay for the food that we're going to cook for them, or cook for future clients. So I didn't have, like many of you, I didn't have a financial education. Like you grow up, and I was educated growing up as a kid, taking more care into where I spent my money and how I spent it, rather than how to make money or how to invest or how to, manage a business. So at this point in my life, I realized I had to go back. I had to go back to school, or I had to go back to a place where I could actually learn how to do exactly that, how to manage business. And I was lucky enough that my mom, she's a doctor. So on her own, she's obviously self-employed, or she was self-employed up until last year. And she had her own clinic, she had a drugstore, and she had her own practice. So she was very, very successful. And you could say she had a business, right? But she was basically square into the self-employed portion of the quadrant, right? So the same story, like many doctors, many lawyers, many dentists and stuff like that. She had her own practice and her own patients, and while she was there, like the business would make money. While she was writing the prescriptions, the drugstore would be selling drugs, while she was doing all the procedures, like the surgeries, stuff like that, the patients would come back for their other appointments, like the checkups and things like that. So the business, you could say, the business side of it was kind of there, but as soon as she took holidays, or we took holidays as a family, obviously the income would drop, because there was nobody there to look out for the patients, for the clients,
business,
right?
it's self-employed.
Exactly. So I mean, we had a bit of a foot on the right path, because she's a dermatologist. So most of the time she would have she would schedule, for example, like cosmetic treatments, or like acne or things like that, where the patient has to come in regular intervals, say every week. So she could schedule ahead people, and then like take a few holidays, right? And the income wouldn't drop dramatically, but still, I mean, the difference in income would be as big as 80-90% drop from when she was there handling new patients, new consultations, surgeries, things like that, to kind of like the maintenance stage, you could say.
So you changed from being an employed chef to going into your mom's business.
Exactly. So what I did was I moved back to Mexico, and I spoke to my mom, and I said, listen, I need to learn how to manage a business, how to have my own business. And you are, in my mind, she was already a big successful businesswoman, right? She was handling this for over 20 years. And I thought, I might actually learn something from you, but and help you run it better. I wasn't thinking of like, oh, how do I make this a bigger business? Because I wasn't a doctor. So in my head, I was thinking like, I cannot get into the business, but I can get into the management side of it, like the management portion, the making sure we had the right people, making sure we had the right equipment, making sure all the day-to-day kind of thing. And also in that sense, kind of release some pressure from the day-to-day workload from my mom as well, at the same time that I would be learning. And I went back to school. I found also a brief diploma, like a 6-month diploma in finances, which was really, really great, because he taught me most of the basics. I couldn't read a financial statement before. For me, it was like, okay, this is income, and these are my expenses. And that was the whole summary of my knowledge regarding money, how much money I was making, how much money I was spending. That's all I knew. And through this, I started learning about tax strategies. I started learning about different kinds of like tax brackets, and like how much money you've got before taxes, after taxes, all the kind of things that you need to learn for managing successfully a business. So I actually, like that actually helped me quite a lot, because we were at one point with a family business that the clinic was turning 20 years. So we were going through the 20th year anniversary for the clinic. And obviously my mom was like, we need to make this prettier. We need to refurbish the building. It's 20 years old. Like we have 20-year-old wood sitting in there, and the cushions are nasty, and my desk is horrible now. And suddenly it was kind of like a huge kind of like middle life crisis, right? And she wanted everything new. So we ended up getting a business loan, given the fact that the business was afloat. So we ended up getting a business loan, and it was for $175,000, and it was a five to 10 year loan, very, very simple, like simple interest rate. I remember the APR on it was something like 18%. So it was very, very straightforward. You could, and I can see your
18%
face. That's
so
like
18% is a pretty high interest rate.
that's Mexican rates for you. So with a successful business, with a small-ish enterprise, you could say, the best APR rate that we could get for a 10-year business loan was 18%, 17.9, 17.8, which is 18 basically.
Okay, so you had the loan at 18% to refurbish the clinic.
The clinic and the drugstore, yes.
So what did you do?
We took on $175,000 loan with an 18% APR. And because obviously the way things work, sometimes you have to go and buy materials, or sometimes you have to go pay different things as well, like for to keep on running the business and keep running your life while the business is kind of like on hold and like making much less money. So my mom ended up taking as well about $75,000 loan on her credit cards. And if you're scared about the APR loan for the business, the credit cards here in Mexico, the cheapest APR loan that she had was 24%. The highest one she had was 65, 67%, something like that, if I remember correctly. So it's almost criminal. It's almost criminal, honestly. But it's those are the rates that we get. Those are the rates that we live with, and those are the rates that we have to learn to handle and to to make money with, even though you're still paying a lot of interest. So with all the renovations that we're making and the business still being afloat, and we're throwing huge party, like 20-year anniversary, everything was going great. A lot of the old patients, my mom had a huge base of clients throughout the years. We had generational people, like the mom and the daughter, and now even the granddaughter sometime, going there, because she was very well known. We ended up realizing that the loans or the money that we were making were basically just, most of the income was being siphoned straight into the credits, right? And that got me thinking as to what to do. So one of the things I learned at school was that different people, or different different people in the different quadrant pays different taxes. Mm-hmm. So we ended up having a strategy where we were splitting up the things that my mom could buy for the clinic, and the things that I could buy for the clinic, and which of those were deductible depending on who was buying it, right? So we ended up kind of splitting the expenses for the clinic. So I was basically buying all the office supply, I was basically buying all the cafeteria, and I was in a tax bracket, which meant I was kind of like a regular John Doe, and I was having business expenses. Yeah, so I could deduct those ones. And my mom was kind of like the self-employed, and she was able to deduct different kind of tax bracket, different kind of things for the business, like rent and things like that. So eventually we ended up splitting this, and we ended up saving money on taxes. So that meant a lot more liquidity. And then we realized that because we had that extra liquidity, we could actually afford to pay just a little bit more on those credits, And one of the things that I learned was kind of like this snowball strategy, mm-hmm. which what I did is I assigned a budget for all the credits. So if I had to pay, say, $2,000 here, $2,500 here, $4,000, $5,000, I ended up basically saying, okay, how much money do I have to pay every month, right? Just in credits, just to make sure that I don't get any moratory interest, I don't get any slap on the wrist because I'm paying late or things like that. So I ended up allocating that budget with an extra bit of liquidity, and we ended up paying, for example, the smaller credits first, like 1 or 2 credit cards that we had over there, and the highest interest ones as well, because those were the more damaging, right? At a certain point. So this was a very successful strategy, and we ended up paying. So the loans that we took them within 2011, 2013, mostly. And by 2015, we had pretty much paid everything in full.
So in
So
3 to 4 years, you paid it off, even with those crazy
exactly,
interest rates.
exactly. Just by making sure we kept more of the money that we were making
Mhm.
through tax deductions and a different tax strategy. So if we were paying say $6,000 to $8,000 every month in taxes, by splitting all this, we're now paying 4,000 for the both of us, for example. So we kind of halved it out. So um, that allowed us to become more liquid, and that allowed us to pay quicker, which was a great thing to do, because I hadn't, like, I was kind of operating on instinct, but I was also operating on the things that I had learned on my diploma for the business financial side of it. But what I didn't realize, and this is a huge caveat, what I didn't realize is, now that I was in charge of certain expenses from the business, because I was deducting those ones and I was charging those ones to my own personal credit cards, I was now leveraging the business with my own personal finances. And obviously, my income was not the full income of the business, right? Coupled with my crazy spending, because I was making money, I was young, I was single. If I wanted to go to Brazil for a wedding, I would just buy my ticket and go. If I wanted to go have dinner at a restaurant with some friends, I would just basically pay the bill myself. I felt like I was living the high life, and I was spending like that. So
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
it is definitely. And I realized quickly that I didn't have any personal finance education properly. Like, I wasn't educated enough to handle my own personal money. And so it really came up to a point where my own credit cards, if I wanted to use my credit card, I had to go and make a payment to the bank, and then go and buy the office supplies, for example. So it was very silly. It was really, really silly. And because I didn't have the credit history that my mom had, my APR rates on the credit cards were a lot higher. So the cheapest one I had was 45%. The highest one that I had was 76%.
Oh,
And I had 4 or 5 credit cards, if I remember correctly. So it was very, very crazy. To be honest, it was showing my lack of personal finance education. So I realized that I was falling behind on payments. I realized that I wasn't making a full payment just to save interests. I realized they were slapping me with an extra fee or for late payments, moratory interest rates, which were up to the 80s, 90s, sometimes 110% moratory interest. So a debt that I had grown from, I don't know, $10,000-$15,000 in credit cards soon became $30,000 in credit card debt. And this, if I tell you that we paid off all the debts for my mom's business by 2015, by 2016, so just within the space of 1 year, I was $30,000 in credit card debt myself. So something had gone wrong, completely wrong. And the worst thing was that instead of looking for more education, instead of looking for ways to make sure that I would get more income, for example, growing my income so that I would be able to have more liquidity, because I couldn't do any other tax strategy that we were implementing already. So I already had my tax strategy, so I couldn't work with that anymore. And I was on a fixed income because I was paying myself a salary from the business. So in my head, I wasn't thinking right. I wasn't thinking, how do I solve this? How do I make more money so I can basically use the same strategy that I worked before, like I can start paying my credit cards or anything like that. I was kind of like, in my head, I was thinking like, okay, if I have $3,000 income, but my expenses with my credit card payments are $8,000, I'm always going to be $5,000 short every month, and I'm not going to be able to make it. So I started looking
That's
for
what most people would think, I guess.
yes, and I was looking for exit strategies. So instead of looking for how to make more money, which would be the normal thing to do, right? You get on the second job, you get on the third job, or you start selling stuff in order to be able to make bigger payments, whatever it takes. I have to say that I was looking for an easy way out because I was afraid. That's all I have to say. I was afraid. I didn't know what to do, and I was in a very unfamiliar situation for myself. So along comes a friend, a very well-intentioned friend, who was the branch manager for one of the banks that I owed money to, and she told me, like, like there is this kind of like a credit repair solution company. Like they help people like you who cannot afford to pay the whole debts, and like you might want to look into it because I can see you're very stressed out. I can see you making the payments. I can see you getting charged even more and things like that. So it's kind of like basically I was just digging my own hole, and it was growing bigger by the minute. So without much financial education, I ended up going and hiring the services of this credit recovery program. And to me, it sounded like heaven because what they were going to do is they were going to take all the, like all the calls from the bank. They were going to make all the negotiations on my behalf. They were going to make sure that I would pay less. And they were very motivated because I was going to pay them on a percentage of the money that they negotiated down from. So if I owed the bank, say $1,000, and they negotiated with the bank that I would only pay, I don't know, $4,000. Sorry, no, $1,000. I would pay $400, for example. They were giving me a 60% rebate, a 60% reduction, and I would pay them, like their fee would be a percentage of that those $600 that I wasn't paying to the bank. So they were in my head. I was thinking, like, this is amazing. I'm gonna pay less. Basically, the interests are going to be wiped out, which is what at the time I was getting strangled by. Mm-hmm. They are motivated to help me pay less because they're going to get a share of that. And I thought, this is a win-win. But I was wrong. I was very, very wrong.
What's the problem with that?
The main problem is basically the bank never loses. Yeah, and it's not really a problem, it's just the rules of the game. The bank is never going to lose. So if you owe the bank $1,000, they're going to expect you to pay $1,000 plus interest, right? So that's the one thing I wasn't really. It's not that I wasn't aware of it, but I wasn't really even considering it. And so what happened is that obviously I got sent to the credit bureau. I was blacklisted, from all the credit card companies in the country. I am no longer able to borrow money. Like my own personal credit card that I got like 6 years later now. So now we're 2022. So yeah, 5 years later, I've only been able to get one credit card with measly $400. $400. How you call it? Yeah, credit. That's the most I've been able to get. And that I only use that, like to pay like the monthly Netflix or Disney Plus service, whatever, like just the regular things that we pay like each month. But basically, I'm no longer subject to credit because in the eyes of the bank, I still owe the money. I short pay them, I shortchange them. So effectively, what that did was it just ruined my credit score completely. And I am on the blacklist for about 7 to 8 years now. So if we take into consideration that most of these negotiations were taking place in 2017, right? For me to be able to get out, we're looking at 2024, 2025 before I am able to even decently, if I want to get a mortgage or if I want to get a credit card to be able to pay for the plane tickets to go to the holiday or to pay for the hotel, or to even lease a car because you have to put it on a credit card to be able to lease a car. Yeah. Now I'm not able to do it because of my mismanagement. So that what happened was that I ended up realizing that I was doing everything wrong. in my head, I was doing everything wrong. And so the solution that I found was I have to educate myself. And where do I find these kind of educations? Where do I find personal finance educations? Where do I find literature? Where do I find mentors? Where do I find how do I become the person I want to become? How do I make the money that I want to make, the kind of money that I want to make, without being subject for credit? And that has been quite a journey. so
So how
so
did you
that
manage to start investing without having any money and without getting any credit? How did you do that?
So yes, so the main thing, and thanks for the question. One of the main things that I've learned, I ended up by chance and by fate, I ended up meeting Alfredo Culebra and Rosana Perez Verde, who are members from BSTA, who are obviously part of the team with Robert Kiyosaki. They're business partners, they're friends with Blair Singer as well. And I was lucky enough to be able to start getting close to them, and they've become my mentors, they've become my friends, they've become my associates, and they've taught me a very, very important lesson, which is also in one of Robert's books. And this is to be able to operate with other people money, other people resources, other people experience, and other people time. So you have to become very creative. So you have to be really, really creative. Because at the end of the day, what I've learned is that if I do not have the liquidity myself, if I do not have the credit myself, or the ability to get on the credit, to get on the phone call and get on the credit, there's other people who can. And what I need to do is learn how to raise that capital, learn how to use their money in order to be able to invest it where I want to invest it. So I've basically become like an investment hunter for other people who don't know how to invest, and now I'm making money with their money. So that's one of the things that I've learned how to do, and I'm still learning. Like this is fairly recent for me, and this is fairly new, because at one point in my head, obviously, I was thinking like many other people, saying like, I need money to make money.
That's what we learn, and that's what most people think, right?
Exactly. But and you're correct, but nobody said that it had to be your money. So that's the one caveat that I found that works for me. So people always do this. People always goes to the bank, puts on savings. The bank makes the money for themselves, takes their lion's share, and then gives you the scraps. Yeah. So people are already used to this, and it might sound cruel, but it's the way it is. And for example, in the US, they have the 401k. In here in Mexico, we have the Afores. And people think they are investing, but they're not investing. They're only saving for their retirement. But they're not really investing. The people who are mishandling their money are the ones who are kind of investing, right? And so I thought, in my head, is like, what if I can do a much better deal for them, and at the same time I can have my own share of that that money that's been made. So that's kind of like the process of the journey I've been into, being able, especially with real estate, like trying to find houses where I can make, say, for example, if a house is 2 million pesos, like 100,000, I can make 20 tickets of 100,000 pesos, $5,000. And a lot of people have $5,000, but they don't have 100,000. So I can find 20 people of $5,000 and buy the house, renovate it, rent it, and I can manage the house, and I can charge for managing the house, for managing the renovations, for renting it out, like for looking for the tenants and everything like that. And I can make my money that way without putting a single dollar on my own pocket. So it's extra work, yes, but at the end of the day, I'm not putting money up front my own.
Well, of course it's work. You can't have no money and no work. You have to bring one of the two, right? At least.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's incorporating this philosophy of other people money, other people time, other people experience, other people, like at the end of the day, say for example, if I want to save money on renovating the house and it needs a paint job, and I go ahead and get somebody else to paint it for me, of course I'm going to have to pay them a certain amount of money. But it's going to be a lot cheaper if I buy the paint myself, or the buckets myself, and I paint it on my own on a weekend. That's going to be a lot cheaper, and that means also I can pay myself as being the painter. so as I said, that you have to be really creative when you're using somebody else's time, somebody else's experience, like they are using my own. You need to be reimbursed for it, and that's the kind of mentality that I have to learn, have to grow. Instead of just employing myself, you could say, it's like, how do I make myself more useful to other people and make money at the same time?
Okay, so you started by finding deals, finding people with money to finance the deals,
Yes.
and then you do it and you all get a share
Yes, exactly.
of the
So
profit.
basically,
That's how
at the end of the day, it's just making a huge, like just putting together putting together the deal with people who have the money. Maybe not the whole amount of money, but they each have a share.
I think that's a great advice for everyone who wants to start investing and doesn't have any money. There's lots of people with money who have no idea about investing, but still would be happy if they get a little more returns than they get from their banks.
Yeah, definitely. Which is a lot easier also in Mexico, because like in the States, you have APRs in the States, for example, about 4 or 5, 6%, right? So money is a lot cheaper over there, but the returns are not that great either. So here in Mexico, because you have such higher ones, you have to make sure that you have a greater return as well. And it's not really that hard when your bank is giving you when your bank is giving you like 2 or 3% APR return on your money, and by buying a house or by buying property and like leasing it out and things like that, you at least are getting around 0.8% per month. So that would turn a lot more, like 10, 12% every year. So for them, it's like, it's so much more than the money's going to be able to offer them.
Well, our banks here in Austria, they pay us 0.0001% on our savings. So that's basically nothing.
Okay. And they charge you for having low well, we have all sorts of commissions here in Mexico. So for example, if you open an account you have to have at least, like, say, $200, and if you go below that balance, they charge you money. If you are putting money in and out and you don't have a certain amount of transactions, they charge you money. If you use the internet banking to transfer money from one account to another, even if it's your own account within the same bank or your spouse's account within the same bank, they charge you money. So
they charge for everything. Find some online bank that doesn't do that.
Yes.
You can save a lot of fees by changing your bank. So make sure you do that as well. Okay, great. Our time's up. Thank you for all those lessons. So take care of your debt. Don't go crazy with your spending, especially if your interest rates are 60%, 45 to 70%. Oh my God. And still, if you are in debt, if you don't have any money, there's still options how you can invest. I think that's a super interesting story. Thank you so much for coming. Any final words you want to say, or where people can find you if they want to follow you and know more about what you're doing?
Thank you, Florian. Well, yeah, as for final words, I would say, just one of the things that I had to learn through all this as well is be careful who you ask advice from. Most of the times you are getting the advice from people who might be very well intentioned, but who are probably just as dumb as you are. And I'm going to say that lightly, because I was in a place where the kind of advice that I needed wasn't the kind of advice that I got. And it was up until the point where I started educating myself and getting advice from smarter people, from from people who might not even be well-intentioned, but who actually had the right answers, made a whole lot of difference. So in my head, it's just be careful who you ask advice from and who you learn things from. So being able to find mentors has been something that has pushed me through sitting down and crying and thinking, what am I going to do next? How am I ever going to pay this money, to how do I make money without putting money up front from my own pocket, which is a very different mentality. So that has to do a lot. And that money mindset that you're teaching, Florian, for me is just kind of like the key to money making and money management, because without a money mindset, you're not even thinking about the money. You're not even thinking about all the other two. So thank you also for sharing that and having me here as well with you. My Instagram and Facebook, it's at RVGSP. So I deal with, you could say small money finances, how to start the road, how to start cracking with even just a minimum amount of money, setting up goals, meeting those goals, financial goals especially, and being able to start changing, start shifting that money mindset as well, like you do, Florian. So thank you very much.
Great. We'll share those links, of course, with this episode. Thank you so much for coming, Ricardo. And thank you so much for listening. Again, I'm looking forward to talking again to you in the next episode. See you then. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Money and Business Hero podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode and you got some value from it. Please take a moment to leave a rating, or even better, a review. That helps awesome people like you to find the show and me to produce more and even better episodes. And don't forget to subscribe. I even have an amazing gift for you if you leave a great review. I'll be running a 2-day Money Hero Bootcamp on September 24th and 25th this year in 2022, where we will work on those 3 pillars of financial success, so you will be able to rewrite your financial story for even greater success. The price for those 2 days is $197, and I will invite you as my guest. You can join the program for free if you leave a good review for this awesome new podcast. Thank you, and I hope to see you on that Money Hero Bootcamp. See or hear you soon. Have an amazing day.